Sri Lanka is at a crossroads, not just economically, but in terms of what we want our society to become. Good evening and welcome to Face to Face. I'm pleased to welcome this evening to our studio Professor Henrik von Scheel, who is well known as the originator of the concept of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and he happens to be visiting Sri Lanka and giving various talks and lectures, and we thought it would be nice for him to give his opinion and his words of advice on where Sri Lanka can go in terms of modern society. Professor Henrik, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So first and foremost, could you explain the concept of the Fourth Industrial Revolution?
Sure. The Fourth Industrial Revolution is a strategy I did for Germany in 2009. It was called the Digital Agenda. And then in 2011, it became the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And by design, it is the biggest transformational shift that happens to change every human being that are around here today. So it's 77 mega trends that are colliding together that changes every aspect of our life. How we live, how we consume, how we interact, how our society works, how our economy works. It changes everything that we know faster than ever before. I think most people around since 2011 can sense and feel that change. They feel all safety pillars are loose and things are moving fast and changing fast. So this was what we were discovered there, and we call it the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
Right, so very interesting, because Sri Lanka over the past 3 to 4 years has been in a state of flux where because of our economic bankruptcy, the people called out for system change. That was the slogan, system change. So anything and everything is up for change. And of course now we have changed the top, the president, the prime minister, the parliament, government, and now we are slowly bringing about change to the bureaucracy and to the economy. But where do we want to go? What should we be looking at? Because it was never clear what the system change should be changed to. And this is where I'd like to get your advice in terms of societal change and of course the use of technology.
So today I'm actually together with business leaders in Sri Lanka to go through the future of AI, how to do productivity, smart architecture, and smart manufacturing, and most of these elements, right? But I think that there's a far bigger picture that is heading towards Sri Lanka, right? Sri Lanka is on a crossroad. It has been on a crossroad for a while, but the crossroad they're nearing that they have 4 paths to enter. The first path is that they continue to do what they do and nothing changes, because the underlying corruption that is there, they eat the message from other banks, from other systems, from other industry leaders that come and use Sri Lanka as a vehicle for them to use. So Sri Lanka never has an ownership of it, right? So when you look at the first path they take, they are already on the path to be colonized. It's just a silent colonization. So the key of ownership that you have already slowly given away, right? The second path you can take, you need to have a clear reformation or reform the way that you structure your economy, right? So let's take a view for the next 3 roads on what Buddha said, right? Buddha said, if you want to find your destiny, you have to go upstream. If everybody goes downstream, you have to go upstream to find your destiny. It's a core message on find your differentiation on what you're good at and find on what you shouldn't focus on and what you do. In reality, my expertise is strategy. So when companies ask me for advice, strategy is very easily defined. You define strategy by saying strategy is a set of choices based on 3 choices: what not to focus on, where to differentiate, and what to focus on. So where to play to win. And this is the path that, let's play this idea scenario of the future of Sri Lanka that they can take, right? What is it the first that they should not focus on, right? They should not focus on the path that everybody else suggests them, because they are just making them part of their agenda, of their vision. They should create their own vision and agenda that is different, right? So then you say, okay, what is it they should differentiate on? One path is very clear. Sri Lanka has an inability to establish an economic foundation for them to have their own key, to manage their own inflation rate, their own infrastructure, their own debt. They're giving away that key away. Let's give some basic examples. There's no reasons why Sri Lanka has tax. Most people will say, wow, what? No, there's no reasons why they should have tax. They should structure the financial elements and the pillars in a government that they should have no tax. The challenge is you need to rethink how things are working, trading system, banking system, local banking system, and all of this, right? A simple example, 99% of Sri Lanka's money is securities. What is it? It's money based on money, based on money, based on money, based on money, based on money. So it's paper based on paper, based on paper, based on paper, based on one that has a debt. So it's just funny bunny money. So they are just replicating what other governments are doing too. If they want to structure one pillar, they say, okay, how do we structure assets to securities? Assets you can leverage 10 times. How do you do that in a smart way, right? Well, you do the old models that the German did in 2050s. What South Korea is doing, right? Where you say you create regional banks that are only allowed to invest in regional manufacturers, in regional farming, in regional agricultures, right? In regional families that are building houses. So you support the agriculture. What are you creating? You're creating real assets that you can leverage. So the economy is not based on funny hot air that can easily flow down, but it's based on a structure that is fundamentally working. Right? So that's one pillar.
That's a very interesting concept indeed. So what about the second pillar?
The second pillar would be that you are creating societal structure, growing, but not growing. When you look at the European ways and you say, okay, do I want to be like them? No, not really. You look at the Chinese, do I want to be like them? Not really. Do I want to be like the Americans? Not really. Do I want to be like the Indians? Not really, right? So you have all these options of economic models and you need to find a way where you grow. Meanwhile, you have 2 or 3 big commitments. You have one big commitment on old people that have carried the society and that are poor, have no pensions, and they are left behind. You have a young people that wants to have a brighter future, but they don't see the future in Sri Lanka, right? And then at the same time, you actually have the biggest potential in your own country to find your own pathway, right? So what would be a pathway like this be like, right? Let's say you and I would draw a board and design, how could Sri Lanka do something different that nobody else does, right? Let's go through the different pillars, right? One pillar would be family life, right? And pension funds.
Which is very important.
Yes. How do you create for a family a pension? That means you create ownership in agriculture, that every family can own the land, and every family should go back to the core what they're good at, agriculture. Right? You should be able, let's play the scenario that every Sri Lankan has 1 month a year free to do harvest, to do seeding, to learn the earth, and to help the family, to support, right? You need to be the masters of the skills of agriculture. Even the world is moving towards technology. The world needs spices. The world needs food. But the food Noah's Ark, where's that? Who's capturing the seeds of spices and future? Do you know that?
Not exactly.
It was in Norway, right?
Right.
But then you look at it and saying, why does Norway have the Noah's Ark of all the seeds for spices and all of this, right? Then you say, good, what are we losing in Sri Lanka? We're losing spices, right? So there are 50 different types of cinnamon, but only 3 that are actively in the market sold, right?
Yes.
Does it mean you don't want to harvest or maintain the other 3? Well, if you are the custodian of this, right? Look at fruits, look at spices. The fruits you have today, like banana, like orange, like strawberries, they were not originally like this. They were bred one after the other to be bigger, to be a banana like this, to be a strawberry like this, right? So Sri Lanka has a potential in the biorevolution. So the 4th industrial revolution comes in 8 evolutionary stages. We are now in the 4th stage, the economic revolution, and we're moving towards the next one, the biorevolution. In the biorevolution, there are 8 pillars, and in 2 of them, Sri Lanka has a play. One of it is the future of food, and the other one is future of material. And that means if they create a society that they say, we've been given the soil, we will maintain the soil, and we want to be the experts in harvesting, in managing this, that will require for the government certain things. They need to have a very strong water infrastructure, right? They need to have a clear sponsorship and investment strategy in local farmers, right? In local housing, in local agriculture, so that you have the ability to grow, right? So I would take the same model that they do in Germany to do this. It's not even difficult to do, right? Then you would say, oops, then we have water, then we have economics. Then you say the third one, well, you know, energy. How do we create energy crisis? I think I heard from the monkey the last couple of days that brought a monkey that brought Sri Lanka down, right? So this is a funny story, but think about if you rebuild the old water aqua system you had from the old system you inherited, right? And you build up water and you have a pressure system that works, and you can do hydraulics, electronics in the pumps automatic that constantly flows. You will have a system that nobody has on electricity, right? Because solar doesn't work here the same way because of the rain, because of the moist, because of most of this, right? So you need to find out, is that a system that works for us, right? Then you need to find out a way to say, how do we connect the old with the young? I have 2 suggestions. One suggestion is one element I suggested to my boys when they were 18. Both of my boys, when they were 18, they had dreams what they wanted to do. As a father, the one thing I told to my boys, you have to go out and serve other people for 1 year. To do something without expecting something back and help the people that are in need. Before you find yourself, you need a mirror of the society, right? So one of my boys went to Greece in a food camp for poor refugees coming in, and one of my boys went to Manchester. One went for 2 years, one went for 1 year, right? So what can you do here in Sri Lanka? You have many young people, men that are growing up and they're losing purpose and element. And when I talk to them, the only thing they think about is money, right?
Right.
When they're 16,
Unfortunately,
18,
yes.
when they're 16, 18, the first thing you should tell them, you know what we expect from you in society? You go out, you go to the monk. We are Buddhist here. That means you go out a half year and serve the local society. You feed the elderly, you help the people that are needed, you sleep on the ground. You only have this because you need to learn to serve other people. When you have done this for a half year, you come back and you get a badge of honor. That means then you're ready to be part of society. That means being part of society. Sri Lanka is a society of families. Sri Lanka is a society where some people have less and some people have more. And you need to have an ability that one reaches out to the other. And you need to have an ability to service other people that are less fortunate, right? This is how you connect the old stories with the new stories, right? Marcus Aurelius, the empire,
yes.
the Roman Empire, he said it so beautiful, right? He said in his book, you must listen to the dead, right? When he went to the oracle in Greece and asked for his destiny, she said to him, you must listen to the voices of the dead. He pondered this throughout his life and he realized one thing. He must read books to learn what the past generations has said, right? You have a past generation that has created the wealth that you have today. You need to honor that commitment, what they have, and you cannot let them down. That means that's a hand reach to support each other, right? But that's a hand reach of transferring knowledge.
Yes.
Transferring trust.
It's working both ways.
Yes. Why? Because the youth, they need that badge from the elderly people, right? Good. That's number one. Number two, once they have learned service, then everybody needs to be an expert in soil and everybody needs to be an expert in agriculture and food, right? Because your society is built on that you're connected with the earth. Meanwhile, everybody talks about sustainability. You are already connected with the earth. You are the ones that create it. So you can create products where you are saying, we want to create fertilizers, but we want to create natural fertilizers. We want to make sure that the bacteria in the soil works correctly, right? That's number three. Number four is even more radical. You go in and the government says, we need to build manufacturing industries. We have 20 million people. We are importing nothing anymore. We need to learn toothpaste, Coca-Cola, soda. Everything that we consume here, we must learn to do here. And we must learn to do it better here. That means you are investing in many of the young people that have an ambition, but they have no opportunity. You give them opportunity. You have many skilled people like you and others that can coach and guide them, but they need a funding structure to build this. So a funding structure from the government is really easy. They give out a loan and get the loan repaid. That's a sovereign fund.
Right.
So as they grow the capital of the people, right? So that's a simple thing, right? Then you take the fifth pillar where you become the most radical. You are becoming radical honest to the people and saying, we have got our freedom, but we lost our freedom on the way. That means we have politicians, the last two generations, that have been trying to do the best. Good politicians that were tagged by being corrupt. I don't believe necessarily the politicians were all corrupt. I believe that the bureaucracy that was not elected has created a corrupt system.
That's one of the major issues that Sri Lanka faces today.
Yes. What do you think that you can do to tackle corruption and bureaucracy?
Well, at the moment, our government is taking the conventional, the traditional routes of enforcement, awareness creation, new laws, and so on. But there are many schools of thought as to whether how effective this would be.
I don't want to be a prophet, but I can probably already say that the government that is there now, if they're not doing radical changes, will also be marked as being corrupt. Because it's not the politicians that is corrupt. It's the underlying structure of them that is corrupt, right? You need an approach like Dodge in the US, like Elon Musk, where you are seeing a government that grows and grows and grows. How can you slim it down, right? How can you cut away the the fat that is around it?
That's a very key question, isn't it? And that's something that Sri Lankans dance around. We don't know. These layers of fat have been added on over decades.
But you need somebody, and I don't know how you express that in Sri Lankans, but you know, the English people say you need balls, right? You need to be able and willing to look at what is there and take the long-term important decision for the people, right? The politicians has been voted by the people and for the people. That means they have to annihilate what is resisting the voice of the people, because the people, they are giving a vote because part of them have a low-end property. They need to come out of this, right? You have people who have hope, who have dreams. You have people who have an inability to work anymore. So you have a vast amount of commitment towards the government, and the government needs to slim down to say, we need to commit to the voices that have elected us, right? Because if they don't do this, they have to manage the present, meanwhile they shape the future. So the politicians are doing this in an environment that is under constant change. So that means they need to find a way to establish a Sri Lankan economy, create a pillar of growth that is based on what they are really good at and what they differentiate. They need to connect the pillar between the old and the young, and they need to take care of the youth.
No, Sri Lankans are famous at looking around the world and saying, oh, this system is working in another country, let's do it that way. But what you are suggesting is that we need to look inward. What are we good at? And chart our own course.
Yes. It's even worse than that, right? You don't even only need to realize what you're good at. You are about to be colonized. You're losing your own house by the Chinese. That means you need to establish a pillar of economic instability. You need to follow Adam Smith's principles on economics at the very beginning, where you say you need to be self-sustainable 100% before you can export. And that means you have to create a financial stability, right? You have to create an economic stability for housing, ownership, pension. You need to create an industry stability and a demand, and you create future stability so you are here. Once you have created this, then you can say, okay, we're ready for import and export. In the new global agenda that is pushing with Trump, it means that if you have too much import and export, you are in big, big jeopardy. The rules of the games has changed. The party is not the same. It's not a kumbaya party anymore.
Yes.
It's not a holding hand and we all feel good, right? It's a party, me and myself, and that means it's not a bad awakening for Sri Lanka to say, okay, we need to have fully independencies ourselves before. We've been sleeping the last 50 years because we were in a phase where we were trying to do what the other one did, and we realized it's not working for us.
Absolutely. Now, Professor, you are a specialist in things like AI, and we hear a lot about AI and new technology, but it's unclear to many people in Sri Lanka and around the world how we can best use such new technologies, especially when it comes to shaping the future that we want to shape, instead of just going along with what the rest of the world is doing. So how do we use these tools?
So let's define AI first, right? Because AI is, we hear so many things, right? AI is the automation of intelligence. So then you just have to look at and saying, so where are you using this? The menu is not the meal. So what you hear in the media is not what Sri Lanka will consume. You will not be a big player in DeepSeek or OpenAI and so on. They are US and China selling a solution for you.
Right.
Actually, in principle, it's the biggest stealing of intellectual capital. So actually, the government should be quite alerted to say, oops, what is happening here, my friends, right? But for Sri Lanka will not be a big player in these elements, but they will be a player in some part of it, right? So smart automation in terms of robotic process optimization for manufacturers, for supply chain management is very relevant. The reasons why nobody talks about it is because it's actually, you can get it for $2,000 and you can do it with your team to sell yourself, right? So you need robotic process optimization to save 20 to 30% of your financial costs in your normal organization, right? You will use collaborative intelligence where you are making sure that your sensoring, your connectivity and your digitalization with your digital engineering and digital operations works together with your agriculture, with your warehouse management, with all of this, right? But I do believe out of the 17 technology sets of the Industry 4.0, that Sri Lanka has a play where nobody has a play.
And what's that?
Nanotechnology and biotechnology.
Okay.
Food, the future of food, the future of spices, the future of nutrients, right? That means you are at the centerpiece and you are looking around to saying, is anybody doing something we can copy? But this is not copy paste. This is your product. This is your element where you need to see which spices do we need to develop. How are we developing a spicing market? And you need to use the technology that is out in the market to apply for Sri Lankan, right? Let me give you an example, right? Blockchain is based on 4 main pillars. It's a ledger, so something you cannot erase. It's decentralized, right? It's cryptology and it's smart contract. Smart contract is a programming on provenance. Then you say, okay, Henrik, now it's too much technology. No, let's come with a very concrete example for Sri Lanka. All the spices you have, the simple way to make money is when you can validate it, you can monetize it.
Okay.
I'm just repeating that again. If you can validate it, you can monetize it. When you can verify, validate it, you can monetize it. So if you can put spices on an exchange, and you can do spices a little bit like the petrodollar. The petrodollar is the US dollar linked to oil. That means you create one volatility against the other volatility, so you stabilize it, right? You do the same thing on spices. You know exactly the demand, you know what is being produced, so there's a volatility in it, but you can link that with something else in Sri Lanka, right? So suddenly you can become a power play by playing an economic play based on technology, right? Let's take another example. The Chinese be the digital infrastructure that validates and verifies all CBAM. CBAM is the custom border in scope 3 in sustainability on all products that you're shipping, how you produce it, what the net zero is set off in China, how it's shipped over here, and so on. So everybody needs to verify the price. If not, you need to pay tax when it enters into Europe, or vice versa, right? So it's in the Paris Agreement, it's a set off in terms of this, right? The governments are a little bit silent about it because, you know, in October, it's real. They had 1 year grace period. So in October, when you ship products over, you need to pay 15 to 25% tax if you haven't set it off. That means in October, everybody will wake up very fast. So if Sri Lanka is not creating a system at the port to say, you know what, China is creating the Silk Road. That means they have 2 Silk Roads. One is the corridor, one is the Silk Road, and they're creating the infrastructure for it, right?
Right.
Who's creating the digital infrastructure for it? To verify it. Because every time you do that, you can earn money. That means that's something that you should be responsible for in Sri Lanka to say, why are we not investing in this? Because if you look at it in reality, if China would do it, who wants to trust the Chinese? To validate their own product? Right? Then you say, okay, who else on the Silk Road should do this? So who is a small player they could all accept to be the validation on the stamp? And you could do it cheap, you can do it effective, right? And you can do it very smart. But it's up to you if you are willing to focus on something like this.
Now, Professor, these are all wonderful concepts.
Yeah, I hope
but how do we shift the thinking of the people and government to start thinking along these lines? And it's just, I think the first step is probably the most difficult, because Sri Lankans, we want system change. We don't know what that change should lead to. And we're quite likely to simply end up with a system which is just perhaps marginally better than the old system. So how do we actually practically start thinking about this? How to basically step into the 21st century, as it were? Because our thinking
it's actually
is
quite
still
simple.
Very old.
No, it's actually quite simple, right? So the centerpiece of the fourth industrial revolution is people. People connect with people, people sell to people, people trade with people, right? The people in power here, the government official, how I support most governments is that you often take discussions with different government leaders in private. Because there are many things that they want to ask, they want to understand competitiveness, they want to understand how the policy landscape is changing, they want to understand how the trade changing, how the economic pillars are trading, because nobody educates them on this, on the key pillar. So often I take them in the room. I call it always the sweat room, right? Where we have a cigar and a gin or whatever, and we sit and we talk, and I draw and we talk with them. And I want to give them the confidence that they understand and they can lead with this, right? And after this, then you normally invite the business leaders in. The business leaders who own the backbone of the industry, right? And then you invite the financial office, right? So you are building a horde to align on a mission and how to accomplish things and how to be a driver within this thing, right? It's actually a little bit what Trump did in the second term. Trump's success today is built on all the people he has built around him, right? So if a political leader has a good understanding saying, okay, right, I understand, how can we do the future of Sri Lanka to reshape new economic pillars, to refocus our industry and what we're very strong on, to build new economic pillars, and to have a societal shift where we are maintaining the youth here and we are keeping our promise to the elderly. And we are building a future for the next generation. And you will do this under the umbrella to say, we will do it the Sri Lankan way, but not the old way, a new Sri Lankan way. That you are deciding what is that is making you in the future of the society. You don't want to have a full-blown digital society. You want to have a connected society where the people eat on the table. You want to have a connected society because it will take minimum 2 or 3 decades for you to lift all of the people out of the low level of poverty, right? So you need a level where one hand reaches the other and they're willing to hold that hand until everybody is at one level, right?
But Professor, you are describing what I would call traditional values, which increasingly society has forgotten.
Yeah.
Not just in Sri Lanka, but in many countries, society has forgotten because of this urge to make more money, this urge to become more famous. We seem to lose sight of what is important.
And that's why I'm just repeating my key element, because I think one element that makes Sri Lanka unique is that you have a heritage of being Buddhist. And it's not about being religious. It's about you have an openness for everything. It's about you have an inner journey to yourself through other people. And that connection, that you are deciding that money is not always the key element. You're giving the youth the option when they're 16 or 18 to say, we require you to go out, to lay on the ground and serve the people for minimum a half year. Why? It's because you need to learn to see yourself in the mirror. And once you have seen yourself in the mirror, they can go on the path to seek for money and success. But the path for them, they have seen in their own eyes a mirror of non-attachment. That means they have a choice in their life. And that choice, even though they follow the path of money, they can always return to the inside version of them to say, in the Sri Lankan version, we are actually non-attached. We are committed to serve. We are committed to be there for the long-term drive. That means you are consciously deciding. It's a little bit like Israel. Israel has decided that everybody can go to war. And everybody goes to the army, female, male. You go to the army and you can defend the country. Here in Sri Lanka, you say everybody can be there for each other. Because the society here is knitted together in a string. You will decide later on to say, do we want to have smart cities where everybody just moves to the cities? Or do we actually want to have a society where we have good cities where we can trade, but we want to remain decentralized, because everybody, other countries, they're depopulating the urban, all the countrysides, and they are actually killing the backbone of what they're living off, right? So you're just doing the opposite to say, no, we have looked at them, we actually want a different model. And we actually want a model that is core to our values, that is core to how we want to shape societies in 1 or 2 generations, right? So the key pillar you always give on to society for the next element, right? When my wife and I got married early on, right, we created an ambition for ourselves that we wanted to create a better and a stronger generation. That should be the same ambition that every Sri Lankan has for their family, to say, how is it we create a stronger and a better generation? Right?
Now, Professor, every country in the world, as you said, it's a situation, a time where change is happening, and we're not sure where the change will lead to, because technology is moving so fast. But do you think that Sri Lanka, because of the economic bankruptcy and then the desire to change, for system change, are we actually in a better position to look at society and look at what type of changes we want and to implement those changes?
I mean, it's not rocket science. I mean, like, you listen to it and it makes sense to you. I mean, like, I can sense you are moved by it, right? And most of the listeners will also be moved by it, because they recognize the society that is being presented to them. They don't see themselves as part of this, right? The youth wants to go out, right? The old people sit back. They have a story to tell that nobody wants to listen to, right? You have an industry that constantly needs to grow, but has an inability to take care of the people how they want. You have a government that is just, once you're in the government, you lean back and it somehow grows, but nobody moves any pieces, right? So you're in a checkmate situation, right? So in order to uphold this checkmate situation, you need to create a vision. And the vision is to say, we need to have a society. This is the society we want. That's how political voting works. The industries need to have a clear focus on, this is what we want to focus on. This is how politicians incentivize them, right? The governments need to have a clear view on how they create an economic infrastructure, water infrastructure, how they create an energy infrastructure. They need to be the pillar. I'm sure that the healthcare system here will be a different one. You will not build a big hospital, but you will go back to the old roots and says, you know what? We need a care system where the family can take care of the elderly. If you go to a hospital, you go to the hospital. We have services there. But mainly, we want to have you in the family and maintain the family. Right? Because you will look at the other societies and you will look saying, I don't think this is really smart what they do, right? They are cutting off the hand that fed them.
So, in a nutshell, your approach is to bring humanity back to societies which have increasingly lost that sensitivity, especially the connection between young and old, and the connections that bind society together.
Yes, but ask yourself, which society do you want to live in? In the society that the press preaches to you of the future technology, or society where you're connected with the people? Where do you want to live?
Well, certainly one which is more bound together and less individualistic and less selfish. That's the type of society I would like to live in. Right. So, Professor...
But I should also close off, right, by saying, I do believe that we live in the greatest times. Right? We live in a time where more people have a better life than they ever had. We have increased in health, we have increased in lifespan, we have increased in education. For most people, the last 100 years, life has improved, right? And we should also acknowledge that we have come really, really fast, right? For the last 5 years, disruption have been immense, and it's even going to be worse. Disruption means that everything around us is changing. But here's the good news. The core thing that makes us human is that we have an ability to adapt. We have an ability to invest in each other. We have an ability to love, to care, to support. Right? This is actually what we do. This is what makes us human. Right? So part of this, our ability to adapt, right? That is our ability where we want to go. So when you look at Sri Lanka's future, I think it looks bright. But it only looks bright if the people that are responsible are willing to take up the battle, right? I always call it like the Hercules choice. When Hercules had the choice, he had the choice between vice or virtue. It was a difficult choice. He chose virtue, right? Often you need to take the difficult long-term decisions to actually save society. Society is not a machine you use. Society is the backbone of what we are building on. It's based on women, mothers, it's based on grandmothers, it's based on fathers, it's based on grandfathers, and it's based on sons. That's our society.
But leadership in society is probably the key element in implementing these changes.
Yeah, sure. But that's why I'm actually here. I'm here to talk to the politicians. I'm here to enable them with the leadership skills, with the insight and the knowledge. I'm not even being paid for it. Right? I had a strong impression I should come to Sri Lanka and just see what I can do. Right? Sri Lanka is on that big crossroad. And if they're not doing it, nothing happens.
Professor Henrik von Scheel, it's been a pleasure, and I certainly hope that our politicians and our business leaders listen to what you have to say, as well as our viewers, of course, who would have learned quite a a lot in the past 1 hour. So thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to you at home for watching. Don't go away because the news is coming up next. Have a great evening.